While possession of small amounts of cannabis is now legal in Washington State, you are not permitted to grow.
Well, then I'm not growing weed in my garden. Neil Armstrong said, no, don't put our names on there because it has nothing to do with us. This is about the team of people that put us on the moon. We're in there. Thank you for joining us. This is Salt of the Streets, episode 65 pre-show. I had it written down too. Thank you again for joining us. I am Donovan.
I'm Colin.
And this is our good friend Isaiah. He is here to join us today. We are going to talk about the debates in large and all the different, subjects and topics that encompasses. So we're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about healthcare. We're going to talk about education a little bit. We're going to talk about all kinds of shit. What else?
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Foreign policy, Kamala Harris. There's some attacks on Joe Biden, not like physical ones, political ones.
Kamala Harris got her dick stomped in the dirt by Tulsi Gabbard pretty bad.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I was so excited about it.
I loved it.
So we're going to talk about that stuff and then just kind of whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
But before we continue, I want to thank everyone for joining us again on our Facebook at Salt of the Streets. We have our YouTube at Salt of the Streets. We have our Instagram at Salt of the Streets. We have our own personal social medias. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and alpaca_Don on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both those things. Do you want to? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I mean, Twitter it's just Brooks_Isaiah.
Words.
Not too politically activated, so
yeah. You like sports though?
Yeah, sports and music stuff.
Yeah,
that's basically
always that.
For me.
I like that. So you can find all that shit. And we'll tag him on there on saltofthestreets.com. Obviously, that's where all of our stuff is. I think it's at YouTube already.
Yep.
Find our fucking podcast everywhere you want to see it. It's awesome. Loving it. Shout out to Podcoin again this week. Fucking slaying it. Boosting our shit. And it was down on like Tuesday or Wednesday right after I pimped it and got a bunch of people on there and talked about how dope it was. And like Wednesday morning it was down and I was like, I feel like a fucking idiot. But I didn't know it was like, I thought it was just me. And I already had to reset my password earlier in the week, so I sent them this fucking heated email by like, what the fuck? You know, like, why is this happening? And then I got another email and they were like, oh, we were down, we were updating, like, but here's an extra 100 coins because you said something. And I was like, fuck, you guys are cool. Like, god damn it. So
that is dope.
Yeah, they were rad. So thank you again, guys, Podcoin.
It's very rare to have a very interactive customer service when it comes to like tech platforms now.
When I feel like this app is still pretty small. I think it's still a pretty like a startup essentially. So I think not only is it good for us to be getting in on what is kind of the ground floor, but it allows them to still be like pretty well engaged with the people that are using the app, which I think is very helpful.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, I need you to tell me what you consumed before we got here today.
Cheese omelet and a hill of bacon.
A hill of bacon.
You know,
nice.
Not a mountain again, but a hill.
Yep. And you brought some donuts. Is that what you did? Anything else? Was
Larry
it just
and Christie's note. That's it. At Bear Claw.
I don't think Isaiah has a track record of passing out on camera, so he's safe.
No. Have you heard about that? Have you heard this?
I remember that episode.
Yes. Yeah.
Best that was episode ever.
I had a breakfast sandwich this morning. Some bacon, some sausage. And I had strawberries out of the garden, which was dope. The baby's been eating shit in the garden, like golden zucchinis were growing and strawberries that were growing and regular zucchinis that were cucumbers were growing, not zucchinis. We also have tomatoes that are going fucking wild right now.
What kind of tomatoes?
We have cherry tomatoes and then also regular tomato. I don't remember what the fuck they were.
They Hass tomatoes? No, that's avocado.
No, they're like
the big fat round ones.
Yeah, they're
beef
like
steak.
Early somethings. That's what they're called. Like early birds or early reds or some shit like that. It's something.
There's way too many types of tomatoes, dude.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's weird.
We got some pumpkins going too, though. So that the little boys can carve them. You know, come Halloween time. Yeah, that will be nice.
Nice.
Oh, and then I found some seeds in my weed the other day. Planted those in the garden. Just stuck them in there.
Does that shit work?
So it can.
Maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, you can germinate them. You know, you can take put them in a wet paper towel for a couple of days and get it start them yourself and then do it. But I don't really give a shit. So if they grow or not, you know, so I just put them in there. I'm just watering them, you know,
to see what the fates have in store.
Yeah, and if they grow, then they grow, and that will be cool, and I'm not mad at it. And Jordan was like, "Can we do that?" And it was like, "It's Washington, baby. I mean, we can grow X amount of plants or whatever, and it's not a problem." I don't remember what it is. It's 4 or some shit like that you can like grow, and they're like, yeah, you're fine.
I'm not even 100% on that.
I'm fairly certain that there is, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel very comfortable that there is like X amount of plants that you can grow. It is certainly less than if you have your green card. If you have your green card, it's like 12 or some shit like that you can have at one time. But I am fairly certain that there's a small amount of plants that you can grow.
I want to say Washington
to yourself.
might try to.
Let's see here. Question.
Tell me.
I like gardening and growing my own food and blah, 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 blah. Can I grow weed? While possession of small amounts of cannabis is now legal in Washington state, you are not permitted to grow.
Well, then I'm not growing weed in my garden.
Unless you are a medical user. So
well, there you go.
Get your green card, bro.
I didn't want to rain on your parade there.
No, that's all right. You know, it happens. I can't be right about everything. You know,
that's like the time Theo Vaughn on Joe Rogan admitted to eating owls, which happens to be illegal.
He ate an owl once?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And he had no idea that that's a straight up like felony. And you can't do that. It was like, well, I just had a little bit. I didn't like it. It wasn't good.
Well, in that case, I didn't put them in my garden. I threw them into the street.
Yeah, you're like, this is garbage. Get out of here.
I don't need this. I can't do anything with it. So threw them in the street. So if they grow in the cement, then they grow in the cement. And
there you go.
We'll see what happens. I wonder why I thought that.
I think Oregon allows for 6 plants.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Canada, I think it's got something similar too. Like you can grow some shit there.
I looked up Oregon shit when we went there for like Cody's birthday or whatever 2 years ago. I looked up some shit down there because I was curious as to why it was different. So maybe that is what I was thinking of. Well, that's fucking lame.
Well, soon enough, bro.
Yeah.
It's soon enough.
Give it time.
No problem.
When it's legal federally, I gotta imagine people can at least grow a couple, in their yard. Like,
if not,
fuck them.
There might be some sort of like hemp law, though. You know what I mean? You could be like,
hemp
plant.
Technically,
Exactly.
till it buds, we don't know what it is. So we're just gonna wait. I might make some paper with it, motherfucker, and then we'll see what's really going on.
Oh, yeah, you'd probably get in deeper trouble with that.
If I was going hemp instead, try and make some paper.
Cocaine Mitch will be like, no,
sir, no.
In my state, asshole.
So, Colin, I watched that movie that you were talking about, The Man Who Shot Hitler and Then Bigfoot.
Yes. Starring the great Sam Elliott.
I've heard of it, but I have not.
So I don't want to spoil it, but I can talk, I think, roughly about Sam Elliott's character and not ruin the movie, right? So, because it's not, even if you tell the whole plot of the movie, I don't even feel like it ruins it.
No.
Like, because it just can't describe it, right? So, Sam Elliott plays a guy who shot Hitler in World War II. Right. And then lives with this forever. And then eventually is asked to hunt down Bigfoot because it has like some type of disease or some weird shit. Right. And for me, I didn't feel like the movie was that good, but Sam Elliott's character was fucking awesome. Like the character he plays was so intriguing and so fucking interesting, right? Because he battles with having murdered Hitler his entire life. Like he comes back to America and he's just struggling with having killed somebody like his whole life. And then when he goes to get recruited to hunt down Hitler, he's talking to this FBI agent about having killed Hitler. And he's like, by the time that I did it.
American? Like,
Sam Elliott, he's an American guy that joined the army. And then they sent him, over.
Yeah, he was like one of the original, like James Bond.
Yeah.
What did they call that back then? The Office of the OSS?
Yes.
Office of Strategic Services or something like that?
Yeah. So he gets assigned over there, poses as a German officer, gets into the fucking Reichstag or whatever. Or that's already burned down probably or whatever. So wherever Hitler's at, shoots him and then leaves, right? So he's talking to this FBI agent and this is the best scene of the whole movie for me. And he's like, it's like, by the time that I killed Hitler, he wasn't a man anymore. He was an ideology. Like it was too late. The idea was already too big. The Nazis already had people already lined up, imposters to look like Hitler. It's like, so the next day, he's showing up in the media, even though I know I just killed him. He's like, so the second dude is the guy that gets taken out by Project Valkyrie, Tom Cruise, right? Yeah. The third guy is the guy that actually dies at the end of the World War. He's like, and he's a pussy, so he killed himself. So
it's pretty cool.
And so he's telling this FBI agent, he's like, it's all well and good. He's like, but I never wanted to kill anybody. And he's like, I never wanted to kill anyone, but I got convinced into doing it because I was convinced that it would change the tides of the war. And then I come back and it literally changes nothing. It's like I killed someone for nothing.
Yeah, because by that
You know what I'm
time
saying?
it was already
It was too late.
and-
Yeah. And so he's just having to battle with this for the rest of his life, that he committed a murder that changed nothing. Yeah. And I was like, that is one of the coolest fucking character ideas I've ever heard of. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that's so great.
You kill Hitler and it doesn't actually
And it
mean
doesn't
anything.
matter. Yeah. Like the whole rest of the movie, I was like, this is one of the strangest movies I've ever seen in my whole life. But his character was so fucking intriguing the whole time. And there's flashbacks and all this shit. It was so good.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's to me why I liked it. It was like it's one of those movies that it's like this older guy is coming to terms with the fact that he's old. He's getting
Yeah.
old. It's so he's having all these flashbacks to his glory days and all this stuff, and he's realizing that none of it really mattered at all. And so it's the whole movie is this struggle of him kind of losing all purpose in life, and then finding a new purpose when it comes to go kill fucking Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the kind of movie ends off. So the movie, in my mind, isn't about him killing Hitler or him killing Bigfoot. It's just about him kind of getting old and
Right.
trying to re-find purpose in life.
Right.
And I fucking dug the shit out of
It was
that
good.
movie.
It's totally worth watching.
Yeah.
Totally worth
Netflix
watching.
or-
It's on Hulu.
Hulu?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on Hulu. It's totally worth it. I did, like I said, I was like, this is
There's
one of the
another
stranger
on Hulu I've
movies.
been wanting to watch. Vice.
Vice.
Oh man,
movie.
so fucking good. We went and saw it in theaters. Yeah, me and Colin and Jordan went and saw it in theaters, and it is so fucking good,
So good.
Oh my
To
God, it's
have Chad come over,
dude.
come and watch it. But yeah,
Christian Bale does such an incredible fucking job at Dick Cheney, and the way that it's directed, there's like all these side conversations, and like they say in the beginning, like they tried to do the best that they could, but they obviously can't attest to exactly what the conversations were that happened, but they know what the outcomes were.
Yeah.
So they have just these really crass, very honest conversations, the way that you would imagine politicians at a high level just being like, no, fuck that, like we're dropping the missiles, we're doing it, like it's like, this is fucking great, dude. Oh, it was so good. Yeah,
That's
it goes
awesome.
from him before he's even run for any type of anything until he dies. Oh,
Yeah, it was
God,
like working for some electric company or something, right?
It was
like
a
running power lines
being a
and
lineman.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fucking great movie though.
Oh God, it was good.
And it's who's the director? What else did he make? Was it The Big Short
Yeah,
guys?
The Big Short. Have you ever seen that? The Big Short has Steve Carell in it and has Ryan Gosling in it and a bunch of other people, super famous. And it's about the housing crisis in 2008. And there was like 3 or 4 groups of people that bet against the housing market. And so when it did crash, they made billions of dollars, just billions of fucking dollars. And they bought all this up because in some cases, because they didn't believe that it was happening. Like they were like, I can't believe that these companies are actually offering stock options, betting against their mortgages that they need to survive for them to survive. And so they bought it because they were like, this is ludicrous, like that they're even doing it. And then they ended up, like I said, making billions of dollars. Yeah. So it's fucking so
one
good.
called?
The Big Short. Yeah.
Big Short. Ryan Gosling,
yeah.
Casey Groves, Christian Bale.
Super
I mean,
famous
there's
people in that
so
movie.
many.
It's
And-
fucking so good.
Like half the super famous people aren't actually in like the storyline. They're there as like a narrator who just shows
Right.
up and like fills you in on some shit.
Because it's
Really
such
cool
a
story.
because it's such a complicated subject, loans and shit. I don't fucking know anything about that. They have different cutscenes of like Margot Robbie in a bathtub drinking champagne explaining a large concept that they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like simplifying it, using a metaphor to break it down. And then Selena Gomez at a fucking poker table, explaining like how they're shorting the market. So she's betting, and then they have other people behind them that are betting on whether or not she's gonna win this hand, and so they're like, this is what's going on, and it's so
that's something
fucking
that our
good.
generation could relate to a little bit more too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
Being our age, living through that situation, going, and now we're reaping the consequences of like the fuck ups of the Gen Xers and the baby boomers in that in the housing market.
Well,
just
and-
fucking everybody up for future generations.
and I think that you're correct because you, Isaiah, are correct. That people can relate to it because, like, my mom was very much a person that you saw her house. She got a loan to get into a house that she should never got. That cost too much money for us to be living in. Was a fantastic house, but in the end, that's why we lost it. It's because there's too much money. She never should have got that house. When my grandma was living there, it wasn't as big of a problem because there was 2 income. But when it was just her, like that's not enough money to be living in that house. And that's why we lost it, got caught up. We bought it in like 2000 or something like that because it was right when I was in kindergarten. So that's at the height, of people they're like, oh yeah, everyone can fucking buy a house. If you want one, come and take it. Like we'll fucking whatever you want, I can totally relate to that, and that is not an uncommon story from people we went to high school with. They're like, oh, well, we live in an apartment now, but we used to live in a house, but we couldn't afford that house anymore. And so we lost it. So now, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Super common.
Exactly.
And I think that that's one of the reasons I was so interested in it was to provide backstory to something that I lived through, but didn't understand, cause I was like 18 when my mom moved out of that house, so it took a long fucking time, but for your house to be foreclosed on takes a long time, So it was really good. And it was interesting to know.
For sure.
Oh, totally worth it. It's been out for a couple years because we've talked about it a few times, but it's absolutely worth it.
I think it was 15 when it come out. Yeah, 2015.
Yeah.
Big Short.
So it was good. I think that I watched it on Netflix originally, but it's kind of bounced around to other services since then. So let me tell you guys about this. Last week I was talking to Colin about an Apollo 11 podcast that I was listening to, and I learned all these just amazingly interesting things about Apollo 11 and like the missions and all this stuff. And I don't remember what it was that I told you last week that Buzz Aldrin, right? When he landed on the moon, the first thing he did was he took communion.
You took what?
Took communion.
Really?
It's like a super devout Protestant. Yeah. And so he brought wine and wafers with him that had been blessed by a priest, and he took communion on the moon before they went and did their moonwalk.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not even religious, but I think that's so fucking cool that he's so devoted to his religion that they have just accomplished maybe the most amazing feat in human history. And he's like, I got to thank God, dude, because I couldn't have done it without him.
Yeah.
You just put yourself on the fucking moon. You can do the launch calculation in your fucking head. In your head. You don't need paper. You don't need shit. And you're like, but I got to thank God, dude. That's crazy. That's crazy, Exactly. And so the other thing that I learned this week when I listened to the last episode, there's like 60 some odd NASA missions, that just went to space, went to the moon, did different things. They all have their own crest, their own patch that's on the spacesuits, that's up on the side of the, on the side of the rocket, right? It's and they all have the names of the crew on the outside rim, It's the only one that doesn't have the name of the crew is Apollo 11, right? And that's because Neil Armstrong said, no, don't put our names on there because it has nothing to do with us. So this is about the team of people that put us on the moon. This isn't about me. It isn't about Buzz. It isn't about Collins. It isn't about anybody else who's up in space. It's about the people on Earth that put us on the moon.
That's cool.
That's dope.
By request of fucking Neil Armstrong. He's like, nope, I don't want our names on this patch. So I'm listening to this and I'm like, Neil Armstrong is maybe the greatest dude to ever exist on the planet. Like maybe ever. You might be the greatest dude to ever live. And he's fucking dead now, right? So at a certain point, he stops signing things because he finds out people are selling just random items that he signed. So for the last 10 to 15 years of his life, doesn't sign shit. It's like, no, I'm not doing it. Like I will not sign your item for you because you're going to sell it and you don't give a shit about me. You give a shit about making money off someone who gives a shit about me.
But a dude like that, I bet you get the opportunity to actually
and I
have
bet
a
he
conversation
would. Yeah.
with them. And you're like, hey, can you sign this for me?
Right. But he wouldn't do it for just people who walked up anymore. He found out at a certain point that his barber was selling his hair clippings. Right, that had taken his hair clippings, selling his hair clippings. I think he said he made like $3,000 or $6,000 off of it. Right, so Neil Armstrong sues his barber, and he's like, "What you're gonna do? You're gonna donate that money because I don't want it. I don't want that fucking money. But you shouldn't have that money because you're a piece of shit. So I'm gonna sue you for this money, and you're gonna fucking donate it because you shouldn't have it."
Hey,
so fucking cool, Neil Armstrong, dog. So fucking cool.
So what I'm hearing you tell me right now is that we need to just get rid of all of our politicians and start making NASA astronauts.
Astronauts need to be the people leading the country because they apparently understand the way that shit should go.
Yeah, they seem relatively humble considering where they're at.
So rad.
I think there's got to be something, for lack of a better term, religious about being blown out into fucking space and then looking back and realizing how small and fucking insignificant you are.
I'm pretty sure that the first crew of Gemini astronauts, I know they were all white. They were all men. They were all in their 30s. Pretty certain they were all married. Pretty certain they all had children. And I'm fairly certain they were all devoutly religious. Most of them Protestants.
It would make sense for the time.
Because a lot of them were from the Midwest too. They're from weird fucking corn-fed country states. They're all test pilots. So none of them are even regular bomber pilots or anything. They were like, we want people who have flown things no one has ever flown before because you're going to fly things no one has ever flown before, you know? So they were all test pilots. They had all just flown random new fucking aircraft their whole careers. And yeah, so just by chance, they had all these weird things in common, you know? Which is just so interesting. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I liked it a lot, dude. I liked it a lot. That podcast was fucking amazing. And the way that dude wrote it, because it was all written by Bill Whittle, the same guy who narrates it. And he just, you know, so he reads it really well, obviously, because he fucking wrote it. And it's excellent.
How many episodes is it?
4.
4?
And they were all right about an hour. Yeah, I think they got like a little bit longer as it went on, but they were all about an hour. And they was fantastic, every single one of them.
I'm going to have to get on it. Got to get on it.
Yeah, it was totally worth it, dude. It was totally worth it. I had something the fuck else here that I wasn't. The Pacific. So I finished watching The Pacific again. Have you ever seen The Pacific before?
No.
So, you heard of Band of Brothers?
Sounds super familiar.
Band of Brothers is an HBO miniseries about a group of people. It was the first of the 501st, right? That's what it is. And they land, they're paratroopers and they land in in Germany, right? Is that where they're at?
Yeah, 101st Airborne landed during the invasion of Normandy.
Yeah.
The ones that, their whole job was to drop behind enemy lines and start taking out targets so that the amphibious invasion that we all are so familiar with on D-Day could move in relatively unimpeded, which of course didn't work out exactly as planned.
But they did their best. So Band of Brothers is a fantastic fucking miniseries. It's won all kinds of stupid awards. It's amazing, right?
HBO?
Yeah. And then The Pacific is kind of like a sister series that is about people fighting the Pacific, obviously, right? So it's about a group of dudes, mainly Robert Leckie in the beginning and then Eugene Sledge towards the end.
Maybe like the Philippines or...
So they land in the Solomon Islands, which is outside of Australia, right? And so they are on Guadalcanal. And then they go to an island called Pavuvu, which is also in the Solomon Islands. And they go from there and they go to Pelelu in Japan and they go to Okinawa, right? Robert Leckie never makes it to Okinawa, but him and Eugene Sledge storm Pelelu together. And then Eugene Sledge goes from Pelelu to Okinawa and is there when the Japanese surrender and then they come home. And so the last episode is about them being back in America after the war has ended and them just dealing with existing in a world where all they know how to do now is fucking kill people, you know? So Eugene Sledge is at one point is going to try to sign up for school. And this girl who signed him up was like, you don't have like this type of skill. You didn't learn this. You didn't learn anything. She's like, the Marines didn't give you any type of skill that like you could use afterwards. And he like leans really close to her and he's like, the Marines taught me how to kill Japs. So I kind of got pretty fucking good at it. And then he just gets up and he walks away. You know, he's like, I signed up to do something that I thought would change the world and now no one gives a fuck. You know, like I can't even get into school because I don't have any fucking skills other than murdering people in another country, you know? And he goes hunting with his dad and they like haven't even hunted anything yet. And he's just walking, you know, and it's quiet and it kind of looks like, you know, like grass thickets in Japan and shit. And he just breaks down and he's crying. He's just sobbing uncontrollably on the ground. And his dad is like holding him. And I'm watching this before I go to work because I'm a fucking idiot. And I'm sitting there and I'm like on the verge of tears because I'm just thinking like, how horrible it would be to watch your son experience something that you can't comprehend. You know, like I've never served in the military, you know, but if Dax grows up and he, for whatever reason, if shit's still going to the Middle East or he served somewhere in combat and he comes back and he's dealing with that, like I don't have any way to try and help you with that other than to support you, you know, and I can't imagine the pain of watching your son that you love more than anything deal with something that you can't help with, you know, because dad is sitting outside of his room one night just listening to him have nightmares because like there's nothing I can do if I go in there. Like if I go in, I can't help. There's nothing I can say that will make it better. He's just going to say it's fine and go back to sleep, you know, but he's going to have the same fucking nightmare again. So he's just sitting outside of his room, just listening, waiting in case Eugene wants to come out and like talk or whatever the fuck, you know, it's just not to be like, you know, you never know until you're dad, but it's like, there's some shit that I just look at differently since Dax was born, you know, that I didn't think about it that way before because there was nothing that caused me to think about it that way. But like to see that, I'm like, that's fucking horrible. Like, that's horrible to be in his position, you know, and he's just sitting out on this front lawn, just like getting drunk and shit and just hanging out because he doesn't know what the fuck to do with himself. And his mom is like, you need to do something. Like, you're fucking lazy and you're not doing shit. And his dad is like, fucking leave him alone. Like, leave him alone. You know, like, you don't know what men like him have experienced. And now they're back here, you know, fucking leave him alone. Like, just shitty, just a horrible position to be in,
right.
you know?
And his family was kind of that antebellum Southern family, right?
Yeah,
Like
he
real
came,
proper old school Southern Democrat type of thing.
Yeah, so they
right.
expect, you know, for him to go to college and to make something of himself. And I mean, his dad obviously has different expectations than his mom did because his dad is a little more understanding of like what he experienced, but his mom still has that very traditional view of like, get the fuck out and go and do something, you know, but he's still trying to deal with fuck, man, it's crazy. This to watch the show and see what, you know, things that he dealt with, and then to see how the fuck he was treated by like his mom when he came back, you know, it's like it's rolling over on rotting fucking dead bodies because it's just it's so hot, you know, near Australia and in Japan, and no one's being buried. They're just sitting out and they're just rotting, and there's fucking maggots and flies everywhere, and it just stinks. And you're just walking over people to try and survive. And then like you have to come back and deal with that. And your mom is like, what the fuck are you doing with yourself? You know, like, God
you just
damn.
finished reading that book, Helmet for My Pillow. Right?
I'm like 3/4 of the way through Helmet for My Pillow. Yeah. Which is the one that Robert Leckie wrote, who was on the Solomon Islands and then also in Japan. And that's fantastic story.
Oh yeah,
you know, that's absolutely incredible. And his part of the reason he's so good is because he was a writer before he enlisted. He was a sports journalist in his local paper, and then ended up getting a job at the Associated Press. So he wrote like 50 books or something like that, and only one of them being his war story, and that he wrote in 57. So, you know, many years went by before he like actually wrote this book. And then Eugene Sledge took notes in a Bible throughout the time in Japan, and that's what he used to write his story when he came back. Because when he went over, he was so devoutly religious and like really kind of lost that while he was over there, and so wrote all through his Bible, in the margins of his Bible, notes about his times over there so he could write about it when he got back.
Dude,
yeah.
There's that one scene in the show, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was in the book too, where they're all kind of hanging around, just kind of trying to get some rest and stuff before another push. And there's a bunch of the dead Japanese guys around, and that one guy sitting up on the rock, and he's throwing little pebbles into this dude's
snafu,
split open fucking dome piece.
Yeah,
he's got his schmegma and shit inside his skull, and he's just throwing little fucking rocks in it, and it's just splattering all over people's faces. It's
There's also several scenes of people like pulling gold teeth out of dead Japanese soldiers, because that's what was like so common in some people, because apparently in Japan, at least at the time, it was really common for people to have gold teeth. Like if someone's fucked up, they put gold on it instead of silver or aluminum, whatever the fuck we do here. You know, gold is less common here, you know? So yeah, there's people who are literally taking their fucking Bowie knives and just breaking people's teeth out of their heads while they're just, you know, after they killed them, you know? So they talk.
That's been like a fucked up practice ever since like war's been invented. Is that's stripping the dead of your enemy to just get their valuables.
That's how Snafu is introduced. The guy who's dropping the rocks. That's how he's introduced. Is he's breaking people's teeth out,
grabbing watches and whatnot.
And when that happens, Eugene Sledge is like right in front of him, so he's like getting splashed with the shit coming out of this Japanese dude's head. And so to try and like show Snafu a lesson, he turns around and starts to like dig the teeth out of this guy's head, you know? And so then Snafu has to like, he's like, wait, no, you don't want to do that. Like that's fucked up or whatever, you know? And like after that, you don't see Snafu dig any more teeth in anybody's head, you know? So it's like this weird moment of realization of like coming back to humanity, you know, while you're still over there. It's really weird, you know, really weird. Just to read how people get around stuff like that and how they deal with trauma like that, you know, is very interesting. Just the human brain, the way that it's just the way that it deals with trauma is so fucking interesting. You know, that some people in some situations we're talking about, eyewitness testimony can be so unreliable, you know, because you're so shocked by what happened that it just distorts everything that you've been through. But I feel like Jordan and I were talking about it. But I feel like in wartime and in things like that, it's generally more common for it to like deeply ingrain what you've seen inside of you, you know, and I'm not sure what the difference is where, especially if you look at like the Las Vegas shooting, you know, there were so many people that were like, oh, there was helicopters in the sky and there's 5 people out on the ground and there's all this stuff, you know, when we know that there was the one dude who had all these weapons that were killing all these people, you know, and it's just because you're so shocked and so much adrenaline, so much everything going on that it just skews your perception of what's going on, you know, but people who serve in combat are able to come back and so clearly recall exactly what they experienced, you know? And I'm not sure what the difference is that draws those two different reactions, you know, but I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that as like a combat vet, you know you might be in that situation. You're surrounded by it for a long period of time.
Adrenaline too.
Yeah. And it's a totally different scenario versus a civilian that all of a sudden finds themselves in a bad situation and it's over and done with quick versus being there for months on end, seeing the stuff over and over again. It's probably a different impact on a person's psyche, I would imagine.
And from what I understand, part of the point of like the shittiness of boot camp is to like sleep deprive you and put you in a state of extremity in your body that you're able to learn to deal with that, you know? So if you are somewhere and you are extra tired, extra fucking scared, extra anxious, you still are running off of like core or know how to still survive, you know? So you're more trained to deal with that when you come across that scenario where, like you said, if you're just a random person, you've never been through any type of stress training, any type of anything like that, you know? All of a sudden you're fucking hearing bullets around you, you know? You might just shit your pants, you know? People do that in the Middle East anyway, you know, and all kinds of where people still just shit their pants sometimes. Like it shit just happens, you know?
And that's
no pun intended. But.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's what basic training and boot camp's really designed to do is ensconce that basic set of skills that could mean survival, mean the difference between survival and death, you know, for everybody around you. And so they try to do their best to get your mind able to focus on that. You know, like instead of reverting to just kind of shutting down and, you know, curling up in the fetal position and crying, you revert to your base instincts that you learned in boot camp.
Thank you.
And that alone could mean the difference between like your unit getting wiped out, saving the ship, or whatever it is.
Right.
Because like I'll attest to the fact that when you do get in a situation where all of a sudden everybody's like, well, this isn't a drill, this is real. You don't think anymore. You just kind of revert back to your training and you just do it.
Doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you look back on it afterwards and go, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
But
that's wild.
Super wild.
Let me check just to make sure there wasn't anything else that I had written down here.
Oh, I can't wait, dude. I've been watching so many movies and TV shows.
I heard on the radio yesterday, there was a shooting at the Garlic Fest last week, right? So I learned that dude was not shot by the police. He killed himself.
Oh.
Because it was reported that the police had intervened like within a minute and then they took him down, but he shot himself. Less than a minute. And I mean, you know, that's all that I got, but it's still interesting that whatever the fuck happened, you know, he killed himself at the end. He wasn't shot by the police. So I'm interested to find out just more about that scenario, how it broke down. You know, this person went here, this person went here, this person engaged and whatever the fuck, you know, to see how it ended up that he's killing himself instead of being shot by the police when they're actively engaged with him at the time, you know? So I'm just interested to see how that happened. At the same time that I was listening to the radio, fucking NPR, I love that shit. I learned that we are in our 8th round of talks with the Taliban to try and figure out some type of fucking something, you know, to try and end the conflict in the Middle East, at least with the Taliban. And they were talking about just how complicated that is because the Taliban is in there, Al-Qaeda is in there, and then the Islamic State has worked its way down into Afghanistan. So they're all in Afghanistan doing their own shit. And the people who are in the Taliban that don't like that they're negotiating with America are leaving the Taliban and going right to the Islamic State. So the Islamic State that we just got rid of in that area is now being rebuilt from people leaving Al-Qaeda and the Taliban because they don't like that we're in peace talks with them. So it's like, what the fuck do we even do? You know, what is there even to be done about that? You know, that you're trying to deal with the Taliban, which is probably the biggest terrorist group in the area, you know, but everyone who still hates America is just going to leave there and go and work with someone else anyway, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
and I want to talk more about that once we start getting into debates and stuff in foreign policy, especially when it comes to people like Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
Because she's got an interesting take on that type of stuff, specifically from her background of actually being deployed in combat zones in the Middle East, in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I can't wait to really get into that, because there's a bunch of shit that during the debates that it's not what they said for most part isn't that interesting, but it's the context behind what they're saying and why they're saying it that I think has some really good conversation potential.
That's one of the reasons I like having people here and we discuss things like this, so that if there is anything that you don't understand, which is totally the point, then like that's what we're here for. You know, anything you don't understand, that's what we're here for, because we're deep into the shit, you know? So we will most likely be able to help clear up whatever the fuck, you know, the deal is. Because even people, and not that we're super intelligent about everything, but there's a lot of people who even feel like they understand something, but they're only reading from one source, so they don't actually understand it. You know, they just kind of have like a rough idea of what's going on.
And that was my problem, was because I wasn't able to actually watch the debates, and I was kind of texting you about it, but it was just like snippets here and there, and it felt like each person's like own perspective, and not really like generalized, like here's what everybody was talking about, not really what this person was fighting this person about, et cetera, et cetera.
And one of the things I was thinking about this morning while I was in the shower, actually, because I was listening to some podcast about it, was healthcare, right? Because everybody who has a different healthcare plan has some type of data to back up that even if it costs $3 trillion, we'll be able to pay for it through X, Y, and Z. You know, like, well, you can't all be correct, because I don't know how the fuck you're going to have something that costs an extra $3 trillion that you're going to pay for, but nobody's going to pay more in taxes. You know, I don't know where you're getting the numbers to say that that's going to work, because I'm not an economist, but that doesn't fucking seem to add up to me, you know? Nope. And then you have other people that are saying, we can't afford that. If you're not going to be able to do it, that's a lie. It's whatever. But they're like, oh no, you know, this study from whatever fucking university or whatever group says that, you know, we'll be able to fund it. It's like, so what's really going on, right? And I thinking about it, I've realized or decided this morning, I really have to go in and look at the studies that underlie different people's healthcare plans to try and see whether or not I feel like they're legit. Again, I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to say, you know, at the end of the day, like, this is bullshit, we can't afford it. I just have to read them and kind of hope I understand enough to decide, you know, for myself. But like, you can't all be correct. You know, you can't all be correct that it has to cost $500 billion or that it can cost $3 trillion, you know, like it, because that's a huge difference in the amount of money. You know what I'm saying? Like $2.5 billion or $2.5 trillion is a huge fucking gray area of whether or not it's going to work, you know? So huge, you know, so it's like, so like one of you guys has to be wrong. You know, you can't all be correct about this. And I can tell you for certain, without being an economist, you can't add another $3 trillion to the economy debt and not raise taxes on anyone and expect it to be paid for. Yeah. Can't fucking happen. There's not enough money flowing through the United States in anything to pay for an extra $3 trillion of fucking anything, you know? Yeah, it's per year. Yeah, and it's just not going to happen. But like, I think that's Kamala Harris's plan, but her argument is that it won't cost that much money. You know?
Yeah, she's high as fuck, and I can't wait to tell you.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, but at the end of the day, like, you can't both be right. Either it's going to cost $3 trillion or it's not going to cost $3 trillion. You can't both be right, but you both have paperwork that says that you're right, you know? So what the fuck is the real answer? Like, and that's part of the problem in people not understanding, you know, is that both of these candidates have evidence that speaks in their favor. So which one of these things is wrong, you know, because they're both institutes. They're, you know, you're both a college or maybe you're a think tank, you know? So then at that point you're like, oh, well, so what's more legit? This think tank who wrote this one or this university who's been around for 150 years that wrote this one? Probably this university that's been around for 150 years, not these people who get paid to find a solution to a certain problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because this is interest,
right? Because this is a left-wing think tank. So there are a bunch of left-wing people paid by left-wing people to find a left-wing solution to something, you know? It's like a college, right? Whereas a college might lean a certain way, but at the end, it's still an academic institute and it has to be accredited by other academic institutes who are going to read that report and say whether or not it's valid, you know? Think tank is going to write whatever the fuck they want and put it out and be like, here you go, bitch. Yeah.
Nothing behind it.
Exactly. So those are the things that beg deeper investigation, but who the fuck has time to read 9 other healthcare proposals and see which one is legitimate? You know what I'm saying? we find the time, and that's why motherfuckers come here. So, so with that, I think that we will head into the actual show. This was a great fucking pre-show, boys. Thank you. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, we will hit on the fucking social medias. We have our own personal social medias. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and alpaca_Don on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both those things. Brooks_Isaiah on Twitter. We have our Facebook at Salt of the Streets, YouTube at Salt of the Streets, Instagram at Salt of the Streets. You can find everything on saltofthestreets.com, which will soon be renovated to look brand new and beautiful.
Boom skis.
That is it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Check it out on Monday for the episode. Peace out.
Peace.